grandmother, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
So on the U side is there's fear, there's running, there's protection, say from the grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
and what's most X or other
Mm-hmm.
is like this ferocious tiger.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 So
And-
so taking you so the dreamer is really taking on that energy of the one running.
Yes, identified with running,
Identified
with
with
fear, identified with whatever,
Mhm.
yeah, peril.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's usually how we relate to dreams. It's like there's something that's like, say, self,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's something like other. Like that's the normal thing, to see this
Mhm.
thing as other. But I think what my understanding of life myth work and these early dreams is this other or this X, yes, may be a problematic figure that could show up in different ways in life, in maybe really troubling ways,
Mhm.
abusive ways, scary ways, etc., and in some way may also represent how the person may grow, transform, become more whole, etc.
Yeah.
And so noticing the U and the X that arise, for example, in an early dream, may also suggest like a main relationship path, a main conflict that could be resolved, a main way of development, may suggest a main identity, etc., etc. So maybe I'll just pause there more and see if there's any other comments or questions. So let me say a little bit. Well, let me say a little bit more. So with life myth, like I've worked with a bunch of people on life myth stuff, and I have to say, with just my level of understanding of symbology and dreams and process work, it's difficult. It's complex, and sometimes I feel like I don't quite get it, or I can't quite grasp it, or sometimes I feel like it's like a or sometimes it seems more clear. What am I saying with that? I'm talking about complexity. So in that complexity of an early dream, in the complexity of a life myth, I think a starting point, which I think is a really strong starting point in order to understand, like, say, the trajectory of a life, in order to understand perhaps an overarching theme of life, is somehow starting to identify these two parts. That's what thanks, I remember what I was trying to say with this. I think it gives us a foothold into starting to understand a life myth.
Mm-hmm.
So, thinking about dreams and this thing about what Jung had said about, basically I think he was talking about the mind of God. This is the idea that dreams express themselves symbolically, yeah? And that our attempts, as far as I'm concerned, from what I can see, our attempts to understand dreams through rational, linear, logical thinking, I think are quite limited. And we may understand some important things about a dream with those kinds of thinking, but I think to really understand dreams and make use of them and find meaning in them, I think we have to basically meet dreams on their terms, which is through symbology and symbolic thinking. And I think some people are more open to symbolic thinking. I think some people more naturally think symbolically. I think some people are more naturally gravitate towards more linear ways and rational ways of thinking. But symbology, or symbolic thinking rather, is kind of what it sounds like. It's a kind of thinking that works with symbols. And I love Amy Mendel's example where she talks about a dream where there's kittens, blankets, and oatmeal. And if you think about them rationally, well, what do they have in common? I'm not sure. But if you think about them symbolically, what do you think?
Comfort.
Yeah, like that, comfort, right? But see, that's a symbolic way of thinking about their connection, their association, yeah? And so it's that kind of thinking that could look at something like, maybe in a few minutes I'll show you this dream that I had in New Year and what Arnie did with it, which I thought was pretty brilliant. But one of the symbols that came up in my New Year's Eve dream, was having mouthwash in my mouth. And if you think about it in a rational way, you use mouthwash to, make your breath smell good, to, kill bacteria, whatever. But using that kind of thinking to try to understand this dream wouldn't be, for me, so helpful. But Arnie, plus he knows me a little bit, Arnie was able to see, and even if he didn't know, I think he would have gotten this. That the thing about the mouthwash in the dream was it's about the process of cleaning up. And how I do it too much. I'm always trying to it's like perfectionism, trying to get too clean, right? Instead, let myself be a little bit dirty. Don't be so preoccupied with being clean. There's more parts of the dream that help that make sense. But that's a symbolic way of thinking about a dream moment where the person, say the self, has a mouthwash in my mouth. Yeah? Can you follow that? Mm-hmm. And the other thing about symbolic thinking, and especially I think it's good just for basic life, but in terms of doing therapy, symbolic thinking is a really powerful tool. Because if you can think symbolically, and I notice as I get better at symbolic thinking, my therapy gets better. Because I can see the patterns and the themes that are arising. I can see in these disparate situations in life that a person has, through symbolic thinking, I can start to see how they are in fact related. It's the same phenomena, either though it's happening in work, it's happening in a body symptom, it's happening in a fight they had with someone's neighbor. Yeah. So it's a great symbolic thing. It's a great tool, and maybe we'll play with it in a little bit.
Can I just comment on something?
Sure.
From just sort of what's coming up for me from a somatic perspective of
Yes.
is that the physical element, the bodily physiological element there is mouth.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just cleaning, but it's something related to this.
Oh, yeah, right.
But
Yeah. Thanks for that. Because that also seems to be an important part of the dream. It's like, well, wait a minute. Why wasn't I, for example, because I could have been having a part of the dream where I was cleaning my feet, right? Mm-hmm. But no, it's like, that's a good point. The cleaning thing was happening with the mouth. So then, again, you could think, well, the mouth is this, this, and this. But symbolically, you might think, maybe it's really about communication. Maybe. Yeah, I think it actually is. I didn't really actually think about that aspect of the dream until you just pointed that out. Because I think a lot of what I'm trying to clean up, I think too much, like it's a little obsessive and perfectionistic, is stuff that I communicate, and then I feel like, oh God, did I say that? And then, all these efforts that I take to kind of clean up either in the actual situation or in my own mind, clean up what I have just somehow expressed. So I think that's really cool. Yeah. Is that what you mean?
Well,
Sure.
And for me, there's a current maybe underneath that
Mm-hmm.
of this being where we take nourishment, whether it be
Yeah.
food or liquid or
Mm-hmm.
oxygen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This whole.
Yeah, I think in this dream, I think that has less relevance for me in this dream. Let me add the other element of the dream that actually makes it more clear what the direction of the dream is suggesting. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
is that I went outside with this mouthful of mouthwash and I was trying to find a place to spit it out, and there were these Japanese women out there, and I was afraid of offending them. Okay. So when I was going into the dream, it's like there's a part that I associate, partly through my own, half Japanese nature, about propriety, sensitivity, propriety mostly. That also kind of helps clarify the direction of the dream, which is more around relatedness, basically relatedness. Yeah. So there's a strong relationship aspect about cleaning up, okay, but maybe more the growing edge, I think, is that's being suggested in the dream, is maybe not cleaning up so much.
Mhm.
But you know, see, it's hard sometimes to know. It's like, well, what is more, say, the growing edge of a process or a dream? What's like more primary and identified with? What's more secondary and say other or out there? But knowing me, if you knew me a little bit, you'd see. I think you might agree that I think I err a little bit more towards the Japanese woman part. Yeah, and I think a little bit more the growing edge part is like, just spit it out and don't worry about getting your words clean and right and et cetera, et cetera.
Mm.
So it's like, oh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, well, I'm just noting the difference that this returns it to a non-consensus.
Exactly,
place,
exactly.
Which I think is,
That's the thing.
feels really important for me.
Yeah, thanks
Yeah,
for it.
Yeah, and wonderful, so, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, another thing we can do, maybe along with the Facebook page, Arnie's Facebook page, maybe we can talk a little bit about your lives right now, and we can think together a little bit about the symbology of what's going on in life right now. That may also be kind of fun to do. Let's see if I have any more notes on this. So let me say a little bit more about life myth. Again, you know, it's an idea, and it's potentially a helpful idea, but it may not be something that you necessarily agree with, but you might. I find it quite helpful, and I find it helpful both in my work with clients, but I think I've really found it helpful with me. So that's one of the reasons why I like teaching about it. And the thing about the life myth is because it's like a dream, like, I don't know about you, but my average nighttime dream is pretty hard to understand. I really have to grapple with my dreams to understand them. And I think the symbology of one's life myth is not different. They're not necessarily, even though it's like it's going on, it's like life myths, they're not easy to discern. They're not easy to make sense of. Like Jung himself, at a certain point, he understood enough about myths, and he understood enough about what could potentially constitute a life myth to know that he did not know his own life myth. Yeah. And I think it's like for example, when I first encountered this formulation of life myth that Arnie suggested to me, I had been working on myself for years in therapy, and I knew a lot about myself. And I knew all the pieces of the puzzle that Arnie was suggesting and pointing to in this work on my early dream. But the way he kind of formulated it, it's kind of like these different disparate pieces of my life process kind of came into focus. And what I'm saying with this is that a life myth can be, like, for example, it can be hidden in plain sight. Yeah? It can be going on, because it's like a song of life that has a particular theme, has a particular melody, and we might not quite know it. We could be living it in a certain way and quite easily not know it. And one of the things that's powerful about a life myth, and starting to, say, understand it a bit, grasp it a bit, is it can help contextualize major life challenges, traumas, struggles, chronic relationship problems, etc., etc., etc. It can also give a person a greater sense or a clearer sense of purpose and direction in life. So, not a little thing. And again, it's not a consensual construct or, say, phenomena, and it may be, I think it has great potential. That's my bias anyway.
Is it kind of like karma a little bit?
I don't know enough about karma. What do you think karma is, roughly?
Well, I don't know that much either, but like, I think of it sort of the way that you're describing life myth. It's sort of like when I relate it to myself. I think like it's sort of like the lesson I'm learning like over and over again, sort of, or it's like, yeah, like the sort of like difficult to understand but always there, like thing that the universe like continues to sort of just like bring into your life that you keep, and like maybe over several lifetimes, like that needs to be more integrated, or like that has a lot to teach you, or I don't know.
I mean, yeah, like you're saying, you maybe you don't know a lot about karma. I know very little about karma, so I'm hesitant to compare it. But it sounds like it may be related.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how much overlap there is, but could be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's also in